On today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 safest large cities in the United States. What is a large city and what makes it safe? Predominantly what makes a city safe is having a low murder or homicide rate. However, a lot of cities that have a low homicide rate also have very high crime rates. That's why we have disqualified Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver. These cities, like Austin, Texas as well, may have very low homicide rates, but their crime rates are far too high. So let's get started on the top 10 safest large cities in the United States. And I'm going to warn you that this is based off of real information like analytics and homicide rates, which cannot be faked in the United States. So if you've been watching the news and you perhaps think that these cities have a dangerous reputation because you're getting your information from government propaganda instead of real life numbers and analytics, then you are going to be sadly mistaken. Number 1 is Boise, Idaho. Could Boise really be considered a large city? It's a hard call to make. By population, Boise, Idaho is among the 100 largest cities in the United States, and its murder rate is literally unmatched, making it by murder rate one of the safest cities in the United States. But it's not only the murder rate, the crime rates in general are very low here. A popular destination for people relocating on the West Coast, it is noted as having one of the fastest growing populations in the country. Number 2 is San Diego, California. Despite having 1.3 million people, San Diego still manages to have one of the lowest murder rates in the entire country, with its murder rate being less than 3 per 100,000, and adjacent areas like Chula Vista having murder rates under 1 per 100,000. This makes this one of the safest regions you could live in the United States. Combine that with its perfect year-round weather, some of the most beautiful scenic settings including beaches and mountains, and there's no doubt that San Diego, California can justify its high real estate prices, as safety, natural beauty, all of these things combine to make an area be extraordinarily attractive. The city of Cincinnati, Ohio, for example, has a homicide rate that is 10 times larger than San Diego, California. Between San Diego and the Mexican border lies Chula Vista. It is one of the 100 largest cities in the United States, and with its murder rate of 0.7 being the lowest in the country for a city that size, we can clearly see how San Diego, California and its vicinity is among the safest places you could live in the United States. Number 3 is San Jose, California. With a murder rate of 3 per 100,000 and just over a million people, this is definitely one of the safest cities you can find yourself in the United States. This safety is reflected in the real estate prices. San Jose, California, being also the most expensive large city in the United States, people really are willing to pay more money to live in a place that's better and safer. Close to beautiful redwood mountains, as well as being in the Bay Area, there's a lot of opportunity and jobs in this area as well. Beautiful scenic areas, high incomes, strong real estate values, safety and diversity make San Jose, California one of the best places to live in the United States. However, this safety comes at a hefty price tag. With the real estate prices being the most expensive in the country, not everybody can afford to move to this particular city in California. Number 4 is Phoenix, Arizona. While the murder rate here is actually 9 per 100,000, when you look at all of the adjacent suburbs like Scottsdale, Mesa, and many of the other large suburbs around the Phoenix area, you'll start to realize that generally this area as a whole, as a metropolitan area, is one of the safest places you can be. Scottsdale, Arizona, right outside of Phoenix, has a murder rate of less than 2 per 100,000, and that's exceptional considering the city's population of about 250,000 people. Mesa, Chandler, and many other adjacent suburbs all have extraordinarily low murder rates, which means that the Phoenix metropolitan area as a whole is a very safe place to be. Here you can also enjoy some of the most beautiful scenic settings that you'll find in the United States. Although it does get fairly hot being in a desert, for the most part you can enjoy a beautiful setting unlike anywhere else in the United States. When it comes to safety and natural beauty, this metropolitan area really has a lot to offer. Despite a murder rate of 9 per 100,000, it is still a third of the homicide rate that you'll find in a city like Cincinnati or Indianapolis. The suburb of Gilbert has over 200,000 people, and its homicide rate hovers at around 2 per 100,000. So we can see that the Phoenix area in general is a very safe place to be. Air quality, however, can be somewhat of an issue for people with asthma. So if you have allergies, make sure that you can deal with the very bad air circulation present in this part of the country. Number 5 is El Paso, Texas. Located in the western tip of Texas, El Paso has one of the lowest murder rates of any city in the United States, usually below 3 per 100,000. 690,000 people live in this city, which is one of the safest places you can be in the United States. Right on the southern edge of the city lies the Mexican border. Interestingly, on today's list, many of the cities that are the safest in the country are also the cities that are along the US-Mexico border or the southern edge of the country, and it appears that this added extra security around the border makes these towns extraordinarily safe, and criminals don't want to set up shop in an area that has so much security in place. With a homicide rate of 2.7 per 100,000 people, you'll be hard-pressed to find another city that's safer than El Paso, Texas. It also has sprawling suburbs, mountain backdrops, and of course, wide open spaces. Some people tell me they love living in El Paso, Texas for its culture. Other people tell me it's quite a boring place to live. Any city this size, however, will have bad neighborhoods. In El Paso, there are particular neighborhoods that do have a bad reputation, and if you go into adjacent New Mexico, some of the places there actually hold the worst pockets in the metropolitan area. An area right outside of city limits called Canutillo actually does have a lot of murders, but even if it were part of the city limits, it still wouldn't raise the murder rate significantly on par with other large cities in the United States. Number 6 is Hialeah, Florida. With a murder rate of 2.5 per 100,000, it is by far the safest large city in the state of Florida. Unfortunately, Miami murder rates have climbed and it is now on par with Jacksonville, Florida, which means that as a whole, Miami will not make our top 10 list. In fact, Miami would now rank even lower than Los Angeles, California. While Florida has grown tremendously, Hialeah was already built up, and not too many outsiders moved to Hialeah, being predominantly a Cuban community, which means that Hialeah was able to preserve its low murder rate, with other fast-growing cities like Miami simply not being able to control the influx of crime. Despite having a population roughly the size of Orlando, the murder rate in Hialeah is about half as much. With a murder rate that's half as much as any other large city in Florida, the only thing that could unthrone Hialeah as the safest city in Florida is if another area were to become incorporated like Port St. Lucie, and that could be a competitor. But in the meantime, Hialeah is going to remain the safest large city in Florida by far. Did you know that some of the cities on today's list, like El Paso, Laredo, and Hialeah, are also among some of the largest cities of Hispanic population by percentage in the United States? Not only are these the most Hispanic cities in the United States, they also have some of the lowest homicide rates in the United States. These low crime analytics have attracted a lot of people relocating for safety. However, the locals feel that this new influx of people will destroy not only their communities, but also the safety analytics that brought them in the first place. I mean, just look at the city of Miami. Before Miami had the influx of people move in, it was a great and safe city. But now after an influx of people relocating, Miami will be competing with Jacksonville for the title of the murder capital of Florida. Number 7 is Henderson, Nevada, a suburb outside of Las Vegas. Henderson has about 300,000 people, and the murder rate is 3.3 people out of 100,000, making it clearly one of the safest cities in the United States. A lot of people love the city of Las Vegas, but we cannot deny the fact that Las Vegas is just a crime-ridden city. Many large cities in the United States would envy a murder rate this low. Even cities with twice the murder rate of Henderson, Nevada are still considered below the national average. Crime rates here are also very low. Number 8 is New York City in the state of New York. With a murder rate of 3.3, an incredible feature considering that New York City has 8.8 million people. That means that there are nearly more people in New York City than there are in the entire state of Tennessee, which has a murder rate about 4 times higher than New York City. Despite there being more people in New York City than there are in the entire state of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee will still have 3 times more people murdered every year by number. And despite these astonishing analytics, people in Tennessee have the notion of thinking that New York City is a dangerous place. It's crazy to think how people in Tennessee actually say New York City is dangerous, when in fact where they live, you're 3 times more likely to be murdered by number and 4 times more by rate. I chose Tennessee because the state population is about 7 million and New York City is 8.8 million. But even then, you can understand how safe New York City is in comparison to a state like Tennessee, which surprisingly thinks it's safer than New York City. Now, the people in Tennessee have about 91 times more land than New York City. So imagine how dangerous Tennessee would be if they were all compressed into an area the size of New York City. I mean, they can't get along with all that open land and mountains. Imagine if you grab that population and just put them all on top of each other like people are in New York City. How would that go for them? Number 9 is Laredo, Texas, with a murder rate of 3.8. Another majority Hispanic city and another border city. The extra security here makes it for a very safe place to be. Laredo also has a lot of great food. It's a great little town. And while I'm not really a fan of this arid region of Texas, I have to admit that Laredo, when it comes to crime analytics, is a fairly safe place to be. I have to admit it sure as crap doesn't look like a safe place, but the numbers don't lie. 3.8 out of 100,000 people, that is their homicide rate. Over 250,000 people live here, and they get to enjoy some of the best regional food you'll ever have in the United States. And if you really want to step up the quality of the food and the murder rate, all you have to do is just cross the border into Mexico. Number 10 is Arlington, Texas. 400,000 people live here, making it the 49th largest city in the United States. Located between Fort Worth and Dallas, this metropolitan area isn't known for high murder rates or high crime rates. I will tell you, I am not really impressed by Arlington. It really doesn't look like much. Despite that, it does have very good safety analytics. Only 34% of the population is white here, with Asians, Hispanics, and Black making large percentages of the population, which means there's actually a lot of diversity here. And those are the top 10 safest large cities in the United States. If we had continued the list, Honolulu and San Francisco, as well as Los Angeles, would have been up next. Surprisingly, some of the cities that made our safest list are actually being put out as dangerous places by the media and government propaganda. Minorities like Hispanics and Asians are making up large chunks of these cities that are on today's safest list, which goes to show that many times the stereotypes that people in the United States believe on the East Coast don't actually represent the entire country. And if you start to really dig down in analytics, there are plenty of minority places that are doing great analytically. And that even includes African American communities. Take the case of our safest city, Boise, Idaho, and the state of Idaho. The African American population makes 6% more than everybody else in the population by income, which means that some of these great places to live are actually also great places for minorities that are having a hard time in other parts of the country. Not only is there a misinformation campaign about these communities, but also when you look at incomes, they're dearly suffering discrimination. And it seems like the communities that offer minorities the best opportunities are the ones that are attacked the most by the media, as they really don't want people who are disadvantaged to know where they can go for better opportunities. Take the city of San Francisco, which gets the onslaught of bad talk about being a dangerous place to live. Despite that, I actually walked in the most dangerous neighborhood in San Francisco, the Tenderloin, and I can tell you, biggest hassle in San Francisco isn't the crime, it's actually the traffic congestion. I even crossed the bridge into Oakland, California. This is the worst part of the San Francisco area, and while it does look scary, it's actually safer than, let's say, Nashville, Tennessee, with a similar homicide rate of about 16 per 100,000. California's worst city, Oakland, is actually safer than Nashville, Tennessee. Nobody's afraid to move to Nashville despite the high murder rate. So why are these communities depicted in just a negative light when they are actually some of the safest cities to live in the country? Well, for one, they're also expensive places to live, and that can be a deterrent for anyone. I can definitely understand not liking the lack of affordability, but I don't understand why you would start a misinformation campaign about a place being dangerous when in fact the analytics simply don't prove it. Take the city of San Francisco. Its murder rate is about average for the United States, and that's incredible considering that it's a large city. Not all large cities can claim that. In fact, as we've seen on today's list, it's just a handful of cities that are among the largest cities in the country that can actually brag about having safety analytics below the national average, which is around 7 right now. 6.3 per 100,000. That's the homicide rate in San Francisco. Jacksonville, Florida is more than twice that. Kansas City, Missouri is about 5 times higher of a murder rate. Yet you've never heard anybody use Kansas City, Missouri as the pun for any crime jokes. St. Louis, Missouri is 10 times more likely to have you whacked than San Francisco. If those analytics shouldn't be eye-opening to what cities should be the pun of jokes and what cities shouldn't be, I don't know what will. I'm not going to tell you I'm a fan of San Francisco and everything it stands for. For one, it's so expensive, it doesn't even make sense. But if you don't like this city, at least be honest about what it is particularly you don't like about this city instead of trying to make up lies that cannot even analytically be proven. Whatever it is you don't like about San Francisco, go ahead and say that. There's a lot of things in San Francisco that you may not like. Be honest about what you don't like about San Francisco, but don't try to tell me, a world-renowned traveler, that San Francisco is a dangerous city, because I actually walked down the Tenderloin, most dangerous streets, a little hand-in-hand transaction like you would see anywhere else in America. Crap, I live in Florida and I see those every single day practically, and I live in a nice suburb. Clearly, people are just afraid to say what they really feel because they know what they really feel is wrong, and that's why they have to come up with all these lies and misinformation about these large cities.